Okay. So Stephanie Fox has been with us since probably she said she thinks 8 or 9 years. And I'd have to go back and look through see the when she started. I'd have to go through all the paperwork. But Stephanie does quite a few surveys every year. She's been around for a long time, and since she is actually in Ames with me, close by, she is going to be my assistant starting this year. We have a lot of things going on at the gardens, and so I don't always I don't get to spend 8 hours a day doing the survey network, even though in the summer I would love to be able to do that. But Stephanie's going to be helping out. So sometimes you'll see probably emails from her as well as from me, because she's going to help me with approving surveys. Anytime you enter a survey into Pollard Base, we have to go through and look through them. We check for things normally, just like make sure you have the right date, make sure you entered your start and stop time, that you have your weather information. We're looking for, basic data input errors, as well as making sure, double checking that the butterfly species that you entered, there's not something there that is out of the ordinary, or something that I've had people enter species before that normally are from Florida. We have had some that, could be a stray. Last year we had a queen butterfly, which is normally something that's very much farther south than Iowa. But we did actually have one in the state last fall. It was in October. So, when I got that survey, when that survey came in, I immediately emailed the person and said, do you have photos? Because this is not something you would normally see in the state. And she did have photos. So it got put into the database. And it was a good butterfly to have on our list, because we haven't seen one in the state. I think the last one was seen in 2018 by actually one of my former students that was doing some surveying down at Camp David. Camp Dodge down in Des Moines. And so that was a good thing to have that seen again. And then we did have some other rare butterflies that we saw last year. Hopefully we'll see them again this year, if those people are participating again this year. Up north at one of the state prairie preserves, we had some silvery blues, which hadn't been seen in the state since 2008. So that's definitely something that clicked that out of the ordinary box when I was going through and approving surveys. So that's one of those things. So if you you'll be able to see published surveys underneath your site and your route once Pollard Base gets back up. So Pollard Base is our website where you go in and enter your surveys. They took that down last fall. They have been spending the winter rebuilding it. And so hopefully that will be back up here soon. I know probably some of our neighbors down south that belong to monitoring networks down there are a little bit frustrated, because they're probably waiting to enter data because they've been surveying for a little bit. So hopefully oh, okay. I'm just reading it. I got a note up there. Hopefully they get the website back up soon, so I get a chance to go through it and make sure. It should operate pretty much the same way it has in the past. I'm sure a few things will be a little bit different, but I want to be able to go through it, get it figured out, so we can teach you guys how to use it if it's different, or if there's things we need to point out. So but let's back up just a minute. So just say hi and welcome to everybody that's joining us this morning. Hopefully all of you are getting excited and getting through all of your training videos and all of that stuff. So you'll be ready to participate. Sounds like in the next couple of weeks, we might be able to just head out and start surveying already. It's going to be in the 70s and maybe a couple days of 80s this week. So, you know, once we get something out there blooming that the butterflies can nectar on. I know I have had reports of a few morning cloaks. Quite a few people have been seeing morning cloaks. A couple of people have seen red admirals. Those butterflies are typically the first ones we see in the season. They tend to not nectar on flowers. They tend to nectar on sap runs that they find on the trees. They'll also nectar on animal dung and some other, you know, if they find a place where urine from animals. So they tend to nectar on, I mean, the sap is one thing, but some of the other stuff is kind of not necessarily very interesting or appealing. But that's where they get their food and minerals and stuff from them, the substrate that they need. So once the grass gets growing, the dandelions will start blooming. That's a good early source for nectar for some of our early butterflies. And some of the different spring bulbs that people have in their yards. It's a little more difficult if you have a site out somewhere native. It takes a while for some of those things to start blooming. But I mean, even a lot of parks and stuff, you'll find dandelions along the path because it's just hard for them to not have those in some areas. And then clover, if you have any native clovers, sometimes those are pretty early. Otherwise, it takes maybe a little bit longer for some of the native plants to start blooming. But if you have areas where there are trees, you should maybe find some of those early butterflies that are sap feeders. So, but even so, I was telling one of the people that's participating today, even if there aren't butterflies out, if you're a new volunteer this year, once we get your route mapped out, it's a good opportunity in this nice weather to get out and walk your survey route, and make sure that it's set up the way you want it to. It gives you time to make any changes or anything early in the season before you do start seeing butterflies. So we can get that route set up exactly the way you want it. That'll make things a little bit easier for everybody. Before I get into anything, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask right off the bat? You might have to unmute yourself. You might, because usually when you join, you're already muted. But if anybody has any questions right off the bat. Not yet? Okay, so I just have a short list of things that I want to talk to everybody about and kind of show you. We'll just kind of go through that list. Feel free to jump in and ask questions as we're going through things. I want to make sure everybody understands. If you haven't started doing your training videos yet, I think there's quite a few people that are all the way through those. Make sure you go all the way to the end of that training video. It will prompt a pop-up for you so you can electronically sign the volunteer service agreement. That's something that we're required to have because we're associated with the university. So just kind of read through that, make sure you get that signed otherwise Kim will be emailing and trying to hunt you down to get that signed so you get approved. And then I'm going to show you some other things you can kind of work through before you get out there and start surveying that hopefully will help you out when you get out in the field and start seeing butterflies. So I'm going to maneuver some things around here. See if we can go to this. I don't know if I might have to share my screen. Let me go back here. Make sure we're doing that. Okay, can everybody see the Google Chrome?
No. We just see you, Anita.
Okay. All right. Something's not working right. Bear with me for a minute. This is my first time using this computer, so. Share. Desktop. I don't know why it wants me to. Well, shoot. Allow the apps below to record content of your screen.
Did you click on share screen?
Zoom until it is quit later. Okay, let's try this again. I don't know. Can you guys see this now?
Yes, you've started sharing Citizens Scientist Central.
Okay, whoops, and then I made it go away.
Well, it's up still on mine. So I think it's still up, and you are shown in the little box in your
Is that
screen.
better?
Yep, it's
Everybody
good.
can see it? Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm going to move this. If I can figure out how to do this. Nope. I need to go up here. Okay. We're going to get rid of that so you guys can see the whole thing. Okay, so this is our Google website. So going to this website will help you find a lot of different things that can help you out. So first thing on here, if you go to the 2023 season, the drop down, the dates to know, this has all of our different Zoom meetings listed on here. I'm going to try to move this out of the way farther. So this has all the different Zoom meetings that we'll be having. So you can see our next one is May 20th. That's always a good one because we kind of get together with all the current volunteers also. And we talk about any questions that anybody has. So this is a good time to ask questions if you come up with questions after today. We also do a butterfly quiz, an ID quiz. So this is a good place to test what your knowledge is as far as which butterflies you already know But we'll talk about some other things too, go through some other things here. This is our survey site. So this is just kind of a picture of the different regions we have in the state, and also shows the different counties listed underneath there. Gotta get used to this keyboard. Different counties of where we have routes at. So I'm going to go to this. This is the resources page. This kind of gives you a quick review of some safety things to think about as you get ready to go out and survey. Talks about staying connected. So if you're surveying by yourself, make sure to let somebody know where you're at. Recommendations. This talks about having butterfly cards with you, which I'll show you where you can get those. If your survey site allows, you can take a net with you if you want to capture, so you can identify. I do not do this because I don't like dragging a net along. It's just one more thing you have to carry. If you have close focus binoculars, sometimes those can help. If you're good with them, they can be advantageous. If you're not good at using them, it's sometimes really difficult. I don't have a whole lot of experience with close focus binoculars, so by the time I find the butterfly in them, it's usually gone. So something to think about, how familiar you are with those. So under resources, we're going to go to training and continuing education. So your training video, your first training video is actually available through Better Impact. So that's a different site. But once you get done with that, these are some things that I have put together to help you kind of familiarize yourself with, as far as some of the things on the training video. We kind of go through them kind of fast. The 25 most common butterflies. So that's the first 25 butterflies you're going to learn. We go through those on the training video, but this kind of it's a PowerPoint put together, has a little more explanation of some of the butterflies, and a little more in depth on each one. The refresher training slides talks about review of your protocols, and also some training tips on telling some of the 25 first butterflies, things how to tell them apart. So a few more tips there. Orientation video if you need some guidance through getting through Better Impact website. And then I have some butterfly quizzes that we did last year. Number 1 and number 2 are on here. And then also at the end, Nathan and I got out into the field last fall. This is a sample survey of our butterfly route that we do at Ryman Gardens. Some parts of it are a little bit shaky, but it's hard to follow somebody all the way around the gardens with a video camera. I am not a professional videographer, so but just kind of listening to parts of that, going through with Nathan, you can see some of the butterflies flying around. Just kind of a sample video of what we do on a survey, if you are interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next section, the fact sheets, this will help you. This has a lot of different things on this page that you can expand and print. So this first one, this is the butterfly survey quick sheet. So this talks about what your responsibilities are as a volunteer. So it talks about the minimum number of surveys that you need to run every year or every summer is 6. So our official start and stop dates are June 1st through August 8th. But like I said, I've had reports of butterflies already. So a lot of our volunteers, as soon as the weather starts looking like there's going to be butterflies out and about, people will start surveying. It's up to you whether you have the time to do that. I know some people that still have full-time jobs, you only have weekends, or if you have kids, sometimes it's hard to get out in the field as much as you want to. It's just not possible. I have some people that a lot of volunteers will survey once a week. Some volunteers survey a couple times a week, which there are good and bad things about doing it more than once a week. A lot of times you're counting pretty much the same butterflies that you saw 2 or 3 days ago. Once a week usually gives you enough time in between your surveys to actually have a little bit of difference. Maybe some new ones come out, maybe some other ones die off. Once a week is probably a good target. That's usually what I shoot for. But there are times, last couple of years, we've had population explosions. And it's kind of fun to do that. If that's happening, it's kind of fun to do that a couple of times a week, just to go out and see thousands of butterflies at a time, which has been possible with the hackberries the last couple of years. It also talks about so back to the first part, your end date of August 8th. A lot of people survey all the way up until the first frost. August 8th is kind of almost, I would say, in the middle of the peak time. We get a lot of species that work their way up into the state during the fall. And also, if you stop surveying at August 8th, you will miss monarch migration too. Some years monarch migration is amazing to see because we see, hundreds, if not thousands of monarchs come through. Especially if your route is along a flyway, this is a pretty amazing thing to see when all the monarchs are coming through heading down to Mexico. At the gardens, a couple years back, I just stood outside one day. A lot of them didn't come down far enough into the gardens for me to count because it was fairly windy. They use that wind to help them propel themselves farther along than they would if they were just flying. So a lot of them were up in the air, but I could just stand and I saw probably hundreds flying overhead that were just flying over the garden. So it was pretty interesting to watch that. So if you can survey more than 6 times, that's a great thing to do. You'll see a lot more things. And fall can be pretty interesting if it's good weather. So weather conditions. So if there's any precipitation, you don't have to survey. If you go out and a storm blows up in the middle of your survey, if you go out and start and it's cloudy, but then by the time you get halfway through, it starts raining, you can stop your survey. You can take a break if you have a place to kind of shelter and wait it out if it's not going to be around very long. But if it gets bad, obviously stop and you need to get out of there. Just stop your survey, and when you enter it into Pollard Bates, there's a place to say, was the survey completed or not? So just make sure you check the appropriate box there. Survey runs should be conducted between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. 10 a.m. in the summer, you can probably start at 9. The reason we say 10 is you want to make sure it's warm enough. Like today, 10 would be definitely a better place to start because you want to make sure that the temperatures are warm enough that it has to be 60 to 65 before the butterflies can actually get warmed up enough to where their muscles are working, they can fly. 4 o'clock, we say if you start a survey at 4 o'clock, that's probably all right. I would, if it's 4:30, I probably typically don't tend to do surveys that late. The butterflies just get to the point that time of the day where they're starting to find their spot where they're going to roost overnight. And so your activity just goes down really low, even though it's light out until, 9 o'clock in the middle of the summer. After 4 or 5 o'clock, they just aren't very active anymore. And so, it's just time for them to quiet down. So earlier in the morning is probably better, or in the afternoon, earlier in the afternoon. Survey runs should take 30 minutes to a maximum of 2 hours. Depending on how long your route is. In the middle of the summer, you know, we don't like to have people out more than a couple hours because it just gets too hot outside. I know sometimes in the fall, I'm out longer than 2 hours on my survey route, just because sometimes there's just that many butterflies and it just takes longer to count. So, because you're stopping a lot more to write things down, or stopping in an area to get a better count. But we'd like to have it a minimum of 30 minutes. That's what we use for our comparison between routes and different surveyors. Make sure your starting and stop times are both recorded. That's really important. And then make sure that the butterflies that you're counting should be within 18 feet of where you're at. And then we talked earlier about the nets. We don't collect them. It is okay to net them and for identification, then let them go. And identifying butterflies only to the level that you know to be correct. That's one of the things that we'll have a good discussion about when we have the next Zoom meeting and do the butterfly survey or the butterfly quiz. We kind of go into that a lot more. We want you to be as correct as you can be. Obviously, surveying down to what the actual species is great, but sometimes that butterfly flies by really fast and you barely see it well enough to know that it's a butterfly, and that's about all you can do. So you still get credit for that individual and seeing a butterfly, you just don't get credit for what the actual species is. But that's okay, because as you learn, you'll get better at that and you'll have more that are identified. And then this last one says, enter your hours into Volgistics. Obviously, I need to update that because we're doing better impact. So entering data into Pollard Base, and then try to remember to log your volunteer hours into better impact every time you go out and do a survey. Okay, so let's go back. Just a couple quick reminders there. So then some of the other things here, this first list is the 25 butterflies that you learn during the first training video that you take. The second advanced list of butterflies, these are just another group to learn after you've got the first ones down. And I'm working on a third list. There's just a few more that people have started seeing on a regular basis, and a couple that I forgot on the second list that I've added. So I'm working on that list right now. This first thing, so this, I'm just going to open this up quick. This is the download this. This is the printout for the butterfly cards. So what I do is I have these printed out on cardstock. I cut them and then they go, and then I have them on a ring. They fit in your back pocket. So they're great to take with you as a resource to have in the field. Much easier than dragging a book along. So I have that, the first 25, and then here's that second advanced list. So this includes some of the other ones. So like I said, these are great. Print them out on cardstock, cut them out, punch a hole in them, and put them on a ring. And they're great to take with you when you do your surveys. They're also great to have as flashcards too, if you're just sitting out on the front porch or whatever and want to review and learn your butterflies. A couple things. So this is this list over here, down in the bottom left-hand corner. This is the list of all the species that we have in Iowa, which a third of them are what we call species of greatest conservation need. So these are butterflies that are very rare, that you don't see a whole lot, or they would include things that some of them are even considered extirpated from the state. So they're things we haven't seen in the state for 20 years. They're still on the list, but not necessarily something you're ever going to see. So back up here in the first row, the last one, I have two different butterfly survey field forms. So go ahead and take a look at both of those. One list is arranged by families and one list is arranged in alphabetical order. So whichever way is easier for you to think about that and find those butterflies when you're out in the field. If you don't have a person, you can always take somebody with you to take notes. Sometimes it's in the middle of the summer, the end of the summer, when there's a lot of butterflies out and about. It's a great thing to have somebody out with you to take notes for you, because it really makes a difference. You know, as you're looking down, writing butterflies down, you might miss something that flies by. So having somebody take notes is a great thing. And then this last one, this would also be something that you could print out. This list is all the butterfly species that IBSN members have recorded since 2006, since we started. I think there's 92 butterflies on this list. So over the course of all those years since 2006, we have seen 92 different species out of the 120 that we see in the state. So we've done pretty well. I would love to get 92 species every year, but we usually average about 60 species every year. So we do pretty well. But this is something you could also print out just for a quick reference of things that we have seen in the state over the years. It has all the skippers on it, which are difficult. Once you start learning those, you'll understand. So that's a great one to have. Anybody have any questions about anything on the website?
This is Lisa. Are any of those colored guides available to order for pay from your website?
You have access to the website. All you have to do is download and print them.
Well, but if you don't have a color printer, a nice color photo.
You could
I can always go to Staples and have them printed, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You could put it on a flash drive and just take it to Staples and have them print it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you don't have a color printer.
All right.
Even some libraries have color printers and they'll do it for you fairly cheap. So whatever's available close to where you're at.
One thing that I noticed wasn't on the resource list that I like to have with me is a camera. Now I have an iPhone, so I have a camera on the iPhone, but as a beginner, I tell you, I questioned everything trying to learn the butterflies. And a lot of times I was able to get a good picture. And then later when I'm putting my stuff online, I was able to more accurately identify it because I had a picture.
Yep, I take a lot of pictures with my phone, but yeah, sometimes with some of those small pocket cameras, that little telephoto lens and stuff that they have on them, sometimes that makes it easier. But yeah, I always have my iPhone or whatever I always have my smartphone with me. And I generally take a lot of pictures if I have questions about something. One of the things, let me open this back up and show you. I mean, if you look at this, like right here, in this section right here, these are all the hair streaks. And if you just take a quick glance, you can see how similar I mean, if you look at them closely, there are good differences, but out in the field, they all look the same. So having that camera with you, and a lot of these, most of these pictures have been taken with a cell phone. I mean, so here's the silvery blues that we saw last year. And this is kind of a blurry picture, but it's a good enough picture to make that identification for what we saw. Now, I tried to put mostly on here good clear pictures, so if anybody want to use this as a reference source, they have a good photo to use for identification purposes. And then the other thing is, when you get down in here and you start looking at skippers, you can see here all the dusky wing skippers. These, not only do they look very similar, but when you have that little bit of genetic variability, they're very difficult to identify. So it is not uncommon on a survey for most people to always have. I know it's a dusky wing, but beyond that, I don't know. So that's why if you can get pictures, I'll show you what you can do with the pictures that you have to help for identification. You can use books, you can use Google. We do have, let me go to one of my other pages here. So this is Insects of Iowa. This is a great reference for you while you're out surveying, when you get home from surveying, I should say. So this has this area up here on the home page, need an identification. So you can click here to identify a butterfly. You enter the state, because entering the state helps narrow down what it'll give you as an answer. But if you plug a photo in here, I don't know if I have anything on the desktop. Let's see. We'll just use this one. If it can identify this one like this, then. So you plug your photo in. One thing to remember when you do this, you want that butterfly to be as big as you can get it in that square. Because if it's sitting on a flower, if you don't enlarge it to focus on the butterfly, it may identify the plant for you. So we're going to hit click for identification. And boom, it's a 95% sure that that's a viceroy, which that's what it is. So this is a great place to be able to stick photos in. And it also gives you a list here of some other possibilities, but you can see the percentages are pretty low that it's anything else. So that's a great resource to think about. As far as survey forms, so this is something new. I don't know how to get rid of this bar. As much as I can. So this is unifiedbutterflyrecorder.com. So this is something that a computer engineering group is working on for us at Iowa State right now. So some of you veterans might remember we used to have UBR, which was an app, which still is on the Android store, but the way things work with Apple, they threw our app off of the Apple store because they determined that the language it was written in was too out of date, and they took it off the App Store, which it still worked because it's just a basic digital form of the survey, the paper form. That's all it really is. So once this gets finished and they actually are, everything's live on it, I will make up a little training video and put it up on the website. So if people want to use this out in the field on their phone, instead of taking paper with you, this is something that'll give you that option. And it's not something that's going to be on the App Store anymore. It's just a website to go to. You create an account, and then you'll have it, a digital form of it. You go home, bring it up on the computer, and you can enter your data into Pollard based. So once that gets up and running, I will share that with everybody, so you can use that if you want to use that instead of paper form. Okay, so let's go back here. Just a couple more things. So down under recorded programs, this is where we will have all the Zoom meetings and coffee breaks listed. So if you aren't able to be at one, but you want to, you're able to go through and watch these, and that way they're available to you. So links, so you can get to, oops, from here, this will take you to Pollard Base. It will take you to Insects of Iowa. Pomona is Butterflies and Moths of North America. Better Impact is obviously where you enter your volunteer hours. Bug Guide also is a website where it can help you identify things. And Pomona is a good website to use also. It has several pictures on it and lots of information. Talks about the host plant and all those different kinds of things. So, if you want to, I have last year's survey season, the final report for that. If you guys want to look at that, I guess I have that titled wrong. It should be the 22 season. This is the 23 season. But that's last year's report. You can see all the species that were seen last year in there. And then from the field, I think this is just some things that there is a place if you guys send me stuff and want to share things with other volunteers, we can put those up on here. So I'm glad to share things if you find things and want to share them with the other volunteers. Field day. So we try to do in August, we try to do a field day where we all get together in one place. And we go on a survey. We look at butterflies that we find out in the field, help identification. And then we usually have everybody bring their lunch and we all eat lunch together and talk about the things that we've seen and done throughout the summer. So it's usually a pretty fun thing to do. I have no idea where we're going to do that at this year. If anybody has a good place where we could both survey and have access to be able to sit down and eat, let me know. I have no problem doing it wherever in the state. Some people, the last time we didn't have it last year because we got rained out. We had storms that day. The year before we had it at Ryman, which is kind of a central location. And I did have people that traveled from, a couple hours away that came to that. So, but, I want to try to be fair and kind of move that around the state if we can do that. So we're close to other people. So people don't always have to drive to Ames. And sometimes, if we have it in a different spot, it's kind of fun to go somewhere else and explore for the day and see different butterflies than you normally see on your own route. So I am going to stop sharing now. Go back to this. All right, does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff on there that we looked at on the website?
I don't have a question, but another thing that folks might want to look at, I think the Day of Insects was recorded, and Teresa Comiskey, a retired naturalist, did a lovely 20-minute session titled Easily Distracted by Butterflies. And she focused quite a bit on skippers. So that was
she does, and she's a little bit farther down south. She's in Fairfield, Iowa. So a little bit farther down south, and she has a good I think part of her route is like on an old nature trail that used to be a railroad. And she sees a lot of really interesting things. She takes her camera, so she gets a lot of good pictures. So she did share a lot of good skipper pictures and stuff on her talk that she did. Anybody else have anything to share or any questions to ask? Let me look at the chat box. It looks like I got a question here. See if we can open this. If it will open for me. Oh, that was Lisa that said to include a camera because she uses her camera a lot for ID. So that was a good point. So the other thing I just want to mention again, remember I talked about Pollard base. So as soon as that, I'm hoping that was supposed to be done sometime this month. So hopefully sooner than later, we will get that up and running and be able to start using it so we can all get it figured out so we can get going this season. Up until then, just make sure if you do start surveying, since we're gonna get some nice weather the next couple of weeks for sure, just make sure to save those paper surveys so you still have them in hand once you start being able to get access to Pollard base. We can get those entered. So does anybody else have any questions? If you have questions, feel free to email me. My email is anitaw@iastate.edu, and that's on the website. There's a contact thing. You can always call me at the gardens. My phone number, you've gotten emails from me because you're all here with you've got the Zoom meeting invite. So I believe my phone number is in the signature on my email. So if you would rather call, feel free to call. Any questions you have, just let me know. Yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question so much as you mentioned the list and that we should keep the list. And I would say even after you've been able to enter the list, keep it, because if you or Stephanie have questions, I have had to go back to my paper list because I made other notes on it as I was maybe doing the walk. So I've kept all my forms, and I'm glad I did, because weeks later, somebody may have a question and it's helpful to go back to.
Right, because sometimes there are times when I go through those, and I'm sure Stephanie will find that out when she starts to do them too. You know, I kind of go through them. Once I go through them, I get to going kind of fast because there's some days where, you know, you have one or two, and then there's some days where I have 25 surveys to go through and approve. And, you know, when I have a big pile of them, sometimes I don't pay quite as much attention to the start time and the stop time. I hope they change the date thing so you don't have to enter the date twice. That's one of the things that we suggested, because we said there's no reason why we should have to enter the date when we put the start time in and the stop time, because your survey is not more than a couple hours. So it always happens on the same day. So a lot of times that was the biggest problem, where at the end of the season, I would go through and run the report. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I missed the start and stop time and the date. And, you know, your survey was 2,000 minutes long. And so, or if you didn't enter something right, then your survey was like 2 minutes long. So having those forms till the end of the season is a great idea, because that way, if we do have to go back and reference them, you won't remember off the top of your head, but that way we can go back and reference them and make sure we get the correct information inputted. So that's a good point, Lisa. Thanks for that.
And I'd like to refer back to mine. If I'm looking, is it too early in the season to be seeing a butterfly? I like to look back at last year's and see what I was seeing at this time. You know, is it the type of butterfly? How many butterflies were I seeing at a given time? And also, it's even if you're just learning too, it's kind of fun that, oh, I saw that butterfly 2 weeks ago. What was it? And then I can look back at my sheet and see what I had listed on that day.
That's a good point. Thanks, Stephanie. See, it's good to have you here because you think of things that I don't think of to help interject. So it's great to have veterans here to help give new people pointers. So we kind of share those.
And I did do my first official survey yesterday. I saw one on my route. So
good.
I saw an eastern comma on my route.
Oh, good. Great.
And I will say, since I see Haruko on the call, I've seen 2 morning cloaks at Moore Park.
I saw that when you emailed the other day, and I was like, oh, I should send an email to Haruko so she can go do a survey.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they want to share? All right. Well, if you think of questions or if you have issues as you're going through training, please let me know so we can get you through those and help you out with that. And once you get done with your training, if you're looking for a route, I know I've had some people send me routes that they're interested in. Make sure you get those emails to me as soon as possible, and we'll start getting sites picked out and maps done, so we can get everybody out in the field to get started. So just let me know. I guess we'll end there, and I'll just say happy Easter for tomorrow, and enjoy the great weather we're going to have for the next couple of weeks. It'll be nice to be able to get out and about. It was nice. My husband and I just sat out by the fire last night till after dark. It's great to be able to just sit outside and hang out and not have to wear a winter coat.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you, Anita. Happy
Yep.
Easter.
You too. You guys enjoy the weekend and get out and enjoy the weather. And
All right.
just get back to me if you have issues and things you need help with.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.